Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I am a performance and life coach. I'm joined here by my co-host and producer, Holly Deschenes. So today we're going to open up this idea of receiving. So it's going to be permission to receive. A lot of the times we ask for things that we want, but we have all these blocks to them. It's all these hangups, these conflicts, these internal things. That's kind of been a theme for this week, in my session work. So we're going to get into some different dynamics here. Maybe Holly will share some personal things that we can work through, but it's kind of this thing of, if we haven't achieved something, or if we haven't gotten to the other side of it, or if we haven't learned to receive on this bigger level, we could have these conflicts with feeling deserving, not really owning our value, not sure what our value is, all those things. And, we're always just trying to seek kind of clarity on who we are, what we want, and how we're going to get there. Part of that is coming to terms with things from our past, and that could be guilt, that could be shame. A lot of the childhood conditioning around the proper ways to receive things could be only through hard work can you get this, or these kind of blanket ideas of a lot of times we equate effort with our ability to receive things. And a big part of this process is we try to get into this idea of alignment. Alignment is you lining up with what you want and clearing out the conflicts that are blocking it from you receiving it. So it's more about creating flow, which actually takes less energy once we get these other pieces out of the way. So a lot of times it is just reconciling things in our mind so that we can open up to new possibilities. And we all carry these things to one degree or another. It's really a part of sabotage, right? It's kind of, I say I want this, but there's something in me that isn't quite at peace with that. I might be doing things to contradict myself. And so I think it's a good topic, especially for people that, are used to being the giver. There can be a little bit of this conflict with receiving. We may pride ourselves on giving and being there for other people. Sometimes that's at the expense of ourselves. And so it can be this identity that we carry that could be blocking us. It could be some of the guilt from our past. It could be, the things our parents told us that it's not acceptable in certain ways, shape or form. And these little hangups, they're powerful. And so we're going to kind of get into, what those are, how they kind of show up, and, maybe work through some situations here. So Holly.
So you want me to kick it off
Yeah,
with a sample
I think,
thing here?
we usually think like receiving is just in the form of like compensation some way, but it could also be support. It could be help. It could be people taking things off our plate, right? It could be any number of things. I think it's important to kind of open it up, because, well, I think money's typically a big focus for people. And so when we say receiving, it's always like linked to money somehow. But, there's other blessings, there's other ways to receive things that fill us up. I think just kind of opening up the perspective about it to see that, what am I blocking? That could be support. That could be feeling appreciated, accepting compliments, like things like that.
Sure. Yeah. All things I'm super good at. It's a topic that I think we do need to talk about. I messaged you about it before we got on today as a possible topic, but it also, aside from what I shared with you for my personal examples, which I'm happy to talk through, it came up like 2 other times with other folks that I work with, right? Just in terms of this, there's someone I work with has a family member going through some health stuff. And I just was like, hey, is there anything I can do for you so you can do the family thing you need to do? And it was, no, I just hate to put anything on anybody else sort of response, even though they could use some help. So yeah, to your point, it feels like it's a bit of a theme that's floating around. Before I jump into any personal examples, I don't know if there's anything else you want to tee up on the topic, or if you want to jump straight into that.
I think it is just this. I think it's important to kind of reflect on, what are the things I'm actually blocking in my life. It is through belief patterns. It is like, oh, like things can't come this certain way. It has to be through this channel that I'm used to. And so much of surrender is this idea of like, I don't know. Right. And that includes this ability to receive. I'm often faced with that many times, in my business clients. You don't know when things are going to happen, when things are going to come through. And a lot of times it's the things I'm expecting, like don't come through, but it's the unexpected that pops in. Right. And so that's that ability to be open and just continue to, what we're trying to do is just really attach to this idea of like, okay, I have these desires and I want to try and line up with them. And a lot of it is surrendering the how. It's a lot of the secret stuff of like, you just got to get in the feeling and all that stuff. There is something to that. There is like our mind can be very closed off and limited in the way we're seeing things. And there could be opportunities that we're not even in tune with. And so we may be trying to control and manipulate things to tip the scales in a certain direction, but that control that could ruin relationships, like, with the client, that could turn them off where they don't want to work with me. It's allowing that space, being like, well, yeah, these are possibilities. Have to know that there's much more going on behind the scenes than we're aware of. And so we want to be in tune with inspiration, which is I get this kind of intuitive nudge to take an action, to maybe like reach out to somebody that just popped in my head randomly, like that kind of stuff. Or it could just be, yeah, are people like trying to offer help and support and I'm just shutting it down. But then I'm also turning around and saying like, oh, nobody helps me, right?
Right.
Those kinds of things, which, I think we're all guilty of it. And that's like that stubbornness, we all have it, but that's what a fixed mind does, because maybe in the past we've trusted people and they haven't come through for us. And so we're just like, okay, like I have to depend on myself or I have to control these situations to get the result I want. But, and so that's the pain talking. That's the letdown that, I can only depend on me. I can only rely on me. And that's just so limiting, right? Because we all need help. There's not one person that can do it all alone. Even if we wear it as a badge of honor, there are still like little things that, hey, like I'm really hung up here and I don't have the answers. And so part of that is this ability to receive help, to ask for help, to be vulnerable, to open up. And there's no shame in any of this. Like we talk about all the time, we all have certain weaknesses. We all have these ingrained limiting beliefs that were given to us that are very challenging for us to overcome. And I would say, if we have been let down and experienced a lot of disappointment in our life, that is generally where we also like learn to not expect much either, right? Where it's just like we kind of expect the worst out of things. And so in that place, we're also controlling by shutting down potential opportunities, because that's what keeps the situation from breaking our heart. So a lot of times if I have these strong desires and I'm moving towards them and things don't happen the way I think they should, a lot of times I see that as a sign is it's not going to happen. And, they always say, well, like God's denials isn't like, basically, I'm trying to figure out what it is here, but it's like the blessings, like they might be coming, but it's on a different time frame than you expect. We get attached to specific timelines of needing things to happen in a certain way. And then if we get caught in disappointment, we stay there. And then we start to close off more and more and we trust less and less. So this ability to receive is this understanding that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I have to be in the place to receive it. And that means opening my mind up to possibilities. And part of that is getting into the mode of solution. If I have problems, if I'm fixated on the problem, that's what my thoughts are going to be consumed with. If I can shift to solutions and what I want in my life and start to get caught up in that energy of that's where my focus is going. And I get to this place of resourcefulness of like, who can help me? What are my next steps? What can I do about this? We get back to owning our power, and that's our ability to create things. So it's just this, we may be creating, but then we might get right to the line and then we might shut something down. So it's that ability to get out of our own way. And so part of that process is generally making peace with the past. It's letting go of the hurt, processing the letdowns. And because generally if it's a letdown, I'm seeing it from a limited perspective of this didn't happen the way I wanted it to, or in the time I wanted it to. And so that means it's not happening for me. Part of it is we have to step out of that space. I always tell my clients the timing is that variable that we really don't have control over. That is where the surrender is the hardest, is we want things and we want them now. a lot of these things, it is a process of we have to start to become somebody else in order to receive things on a higher level. And so that may take some work, that may take some preparation. And so that's a big part of what this podcast is about is kind of clearing out the things that are blocking you from that progress.
All right. Well, are you ready to unpack
Yeah,
some
just
things?
throw some things at me.
I know I teed you up a little before, so I'm gonna try to make a long story short here a little bit just for the listeners without all the context. But many episodes ago, there was reference to the triathlon team, and it comes up fairly often on here that my husband and I kind of started, and we're getting ready to go to the World Championships for the 70.3 in Spain. There's a large group going. And I had kind of shared with some of them, you know, hey, I'm at capacity in my real life. I don't have a lot of capacity to plan any kind of vacation right now. And I didn't expressly like ask anyone to do anything in that moment, but I did say that. The next day or a couple days later, you know, somebody's like, "Oh, I took care of this thing. I booked a reservation for the team at this place at this time." I had a bunch of feelings about that, and I shared with you earlier, right? Like I was trying to unpack like, well, why am I having feelings about that? Is this a control thing? Do I feel like whatever? And what I came down to was like, for me, it's I feel this obligation as like a leader of the team. I should have done it. And it's hard. It took like a minute to move through that.
Well, and you and I have also had many conversations about you wanting more help. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like that was part of you starting the team was you wanted things to be kind of more loose and fun and not so serious. But you didn't want to be responsible for all the planning and all the logistics and everything. That's kind of been a little bit of a battle for you is to, okay, so I want to control these things, but then I want the help because I'm getting burnout and I'm at capacity, right? So, and, you know, and it's the tug of war we all have with ourselves. And that's when we're dealing with the ego or surrendering control, that's kind of the nature of it is it makes all these little exceptions of like, okay, maybe this is okay, but this isn't, or it needs to come in this certain form, or it needs to come like directly if I have to ask directly for it too, right? And so you've had some of these desires to have some more help to free you up because you have so much on your plate. And so a lot of times when these opportunities are presented to us, you know, it may be unfamiliar or our role in it might be different than we're used to. And so it's just kind of like the initial response is going to be some sort of rejection. It's just like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with this. Many of us kind of get in that place of, you know, this isn't exactly what I thought it would be. And so like, I don't trust it. It's really about this trust of like, well, if I control it, at least like I have some say in how this goes about and all those things. And those are all kind of it's a little bit of the trauma mind, like trying to create safety of, yeah, it's like I can like forecast what this will be like if I'm in control of it. Some people are brilliant planners and they can factor in many, many variables and create a great experience and that kind of thing. But then there's also people that, yeah, planning from the safety security mindset and controlling details can actually like suck the fun and joy out of the experience too, right? There's different versions of it. These things are always protection mechanisms. It's always like, well, like, why do I need to control this? What am I trying to prevent from happening? You know, and it's like my mind's going to this place for a reason. And it's generally not about the situation. It's about something from our past, which is what we always allude to because the mind is simply a record of the past. So if there's unresolved things, if we don't trust, there's going to be a reason we don't trust. And that's because something's happened to us and we've internalized negative information about that. We've formed as a safety kind of net. It was like, okay, if I can control these details, that's what's going to allow me to be safe. A lot of our receiving gets blocked in that place because once again, my mind is so narrow-minded about the situation that if it goes any other way, I'm going to have anxiety because I don't fully trust. I think that's the thing is it's like the reaction is the subconscious kind of communicating to you, oh, this is different. And then that's why what we commonly implement in this work is a pause because, you know, it's like not every reaction, you know, our reactions, it's just me like keeping the past moving. So it's more of like, oh, the reaction brought these feelings up within me. But if I take a step back, I think through it and I reconcile it. Now I can connect to like, oh, this is a different path and like this might actually be good. So if I react immediately and I just keep going with that, now I just keep reliving the same experiences over and over again. Okay. So the pause is super important. And that's why self-awareness is so powerful. But then it's also the self-awareness that kind of taking a step back and being, oh, well, like I have like been asking for help. And this is help. This is support. This is me not having to cover every detail, which is exactly what I want. Right. And so that's
Yes.
that ability to get out of our own way and allow things to unfold. The thing is, it's not everything needs our active participation. I think, especially when you start to do this work, you start to create all these awarenesses, and then you're just like, okay, I want to be in control of my experience. But it's like really, the longer I've been in this game, the longer I've been doing the work, it is more and more surrender. It is being more and more not being attached to anything needing to be a certain way. Because it's really about restoring that self-trust that, hey, like no matter what happens, it's about my mindset, it's about my attitude. Any experience could be a good experience. It's my frame of mind that I'm in. Rather than the details needing to be figured out, it's kind of the curiosity of like what's going to happen and the excitement behind that of like, oh, this could be an adventure. Like I know nothing about this and I'm just stepping into it. But I like trust that I can figure it out along the way. I trust that all the unknowns that might pop up, like, they might surprise and delight me. There might be like all these unexpected things that, I couldn't have possibly known. And so in that surrender, we're expanding our mind, but then we're allowing for new experiences to really flow into our awareness of like, well, I thought I wanted this, but then this thing happened and that expanded my mind. And now I don't know if I want that anymore. I might want something different. It's just like allowing things to open up. When you're present, your mind's no longer taking the past and projecting it into the future. That's really our goal. So whether I'm working with an athlete or a business professional, it really is just like, hey, your mind's just keeps using what you know, but like if we want different results, we actually just need to get present and trust ourselves that we'll figure it out along the way. So I can take steps in the unknown, but I believe in myself. I believe in my competence. That's how I open new doors, is by taking new actions. And so that is going to be about just being present with situations and adjusting moment to moment rather than having to have everything scripted. and and
Yeah, for
and
sure.
what's like fun is like, with the podcast here, we're going totally unscripted now, which is it was mostly unscripted, but now it's like, oh, this is even more fun because I have no idea what I'm going to say at all. So that's the thing, is it's like that's trust, right? It's like, jumping off the ledge and trusting you'll figure it out along the way. Part of it is that's our receiving, is like, as we're in this conversation, I have this trust that I'm going to be able to receive thought to deliver on the podcast. Or if I'm in session, it's
Right.
the same way. I have no idea what that person's going to talk about. And it's just like, hey, like, what's going on? But it's like, let's get a flow going. And then from that flow, new things are born. Right. And so that's about getting out of the way. That's about letting go of control. And that's about allowing things to happen rather than trying to prevent things from happening. That's an important distinction there. If I'm trying to
Yes.
prevent things
Yeah.
from happening, that's me trying to protect myself from pain. If I'm allowing things to happen, that's me trusting in the future.
Well, it was interesting because as soon as I read the message and I was, oh, like, woof. And I was like, oh, what would Brandon say about that? Like, I've been doing this long enough now. I think like sometimes it's one of the first things that comes to mind. To the point of the record of the past, the other place that I immediately go now is to this, okay, well, what happened or where did this come from? When you mentioned the trauma brain, I think there is like an element, and it's funny, in my day job, I do some work where I teach in a learning development space, and it came up in a session that I was in, this idea of how things were developed in a way where, well, I knew I had to take care of myself a lot
Mhm.
as a kid and be totally responsible. When I was talking with someone who's similar to me, and we were kind of going through that, and it was like, yeah, that's like what it was. Like, it was, well, I can't depend on these adults around me, so I just am going to figure it
Mhm.
out. And so I think sometimes in the receiving space, it is very much this, there is like it's very real of this. have the full trust that I can totally depend on somebody to show up or to do the things they say they're going to do or whatever.
Mhm. So a lot of these things, it's when we're younger, it could be just the questions of, will my basic needs be met? Right. Those types of things. And that is that kind of very real experience of like, okay, I have to do these things for myself. Otherwise, who's going to take care of me? That could be a possibility. But as we're an adult, it's kind of more of the situations of it's the avoidance of like emotional pain, right? It's more of like, well, like, is this person going to disappoint me? Are they going to hang me out to dry? Like, can I really trust them to follow through? And so that's where we always go back to, well, one, I get better and better at like meeting my own emotional needs because I know I can find peace with every situation, and I think you're really starting to catch that rhythm, through all of our work is like, hey, no matter what it is, it's going to be fine. I'll work through it. So there's less and less fear attached to things not going a certain way. But then it is also being in tune with reality of, realistic expectations of other people of, hey, this person, they have all these things going on, so they might not have the capacity. I think you communicating about your capacity, that's a powerful step to be like, hey, like, I'm pretty burnt out. I don't have much to give to this. That's communicating needs, right? This is where I'm at. So can somebody else jump in and do it? That's opening yourself up to receiving. That is surrender rather than I, I typically have the capacity. I can just always push forward. Now it's more about like, hey, I'm kind of at my limit. And now that kind of gives the go ahead for other people to step up if they have the capacity. And, specifically with obviously your trip to Spain, I'm sure everybody's super excited. So there's kind of more of an incentive behind it of like, if you're flying, 7 hours or whatever, it's just like, oh, well, like, yeah, I want to make the most of this experience because it's not something you do all the time. Right. So I think it's
Right.
with the trip, there's like built-in excitement. There's like, curiosity of like, what's it going to be like? And so I'm sure people are researching and things like that. So it's like, it's an easy situation to have a lot more engagement, and that's good because it's just like, I think people have a harder time with the details when it's just kind of boring and dry, but when there's adventure attached to it, like that's a different thing. I think it's like an easy starting point for you to open up to receiving on a bigger level is like, okay, well, yeah, everybody's excited for the trip. Like this is an easy situation to help on to kind of have some details sorted out. Where can I open that up more in my day-to-day life? How can I start to create more of those scenarios?
That's good. Are you ready for example number two?
Yeah. We'll just jump into the next one.
So the other thing we have going on, and I don't know if this is obvious to our listeners or not. We will have hinted at it in the previous episode a little bit, right, about the work in Boulder and whatnot. I'm really exploring these creative avenues for potential other type of work. Maybe would love to make the creative pursuits a full-time career at some point. Maybe not a full-time career, but at least a part-time career at some
Mhm.
point. And a friend of mine asked if I would take her engagement photos and then also her wedding photos recently. And I was like, yeah, of course, would love to do that for you. It's like a special thing to be a part of anyway, right? And she's like, well, I want to pay you. I was like, okay, cool. That's
Mhm.
awesome. She's like, so what do you want? And I was like, I don't know. I'll get back to you.
Mhm.
I think she asked me
Mhm.
at least 4 times before I like came up with a number to give her. When I text her and I was like, well, how about this? Does that sound fair or whatever? And she was like, yeah, super fair. The pictures turned out so great, blah, blah, blah. This is all the pictures are done. She has all of
Mhm.
them. And I just had made it such a huge thing to give her a number to pay me.
It's a common problem. I think, well, especially, so we view like, so what's my source of money? We generally kind of think of in certain terms. So I have my normal job, right? And I get a paycheck. So my mind's kind of like, oh, this is where money comes from. That's kind of once again, that's very predictable. Safety, security is all wrapped up in that, right? And so one block to it can be like, well, my mind hasn't like expanded to the possibility of these other channels that, form a healthy relationship with money. Generally, they're like, oh, like I can see it coming in from all directions. Their mind's just kind of geared towards seeing opportunities of where money can be created. And so part of it's like owning our value of like, well, if I am providing a service, do I feel like I'm worthy of this number? That's another block generally, is I might have certain ideas about what's acceptable. And, part of it is as you get into things, it's like you just every step of the way in my coaching career, it's just like, oh, well, like this seems right now. Like, so I'll throw that number out there. And then you just kind of see what the feedback is. But then, yeah, I would say like definitely earlier in my career, I charged way more money than I was worth. I was like overconfident. And then I took it way back down and then I've like built it up again. Right. But it's because like I trust my skill now. But it's kind of just like it's just it's kind of just getting out there. It's seeing what happens. It's like, okay, well, like somebody's willing to pay me that. So how can I build off of that now? Right. And so it's finding different avenues to make peace with whatever it is. So we have these internal conflicts. So one is like, okay, like this isn't my normal job. It's just a hobby, but it's a hobby that can make money. Right. So it's like it's starting to form a different relationship with it of this can be an avenue for me. And if I do want to make it a bigger career, then it's like I have to start to get comfortable with that. And so with that, there's going to be blocks to it. We could go to, family, childhood conditioning. Once again, like what are worthy jobs? If you're in the school of thought of you have to like work really hard for your money, taking pictures might not seem like it's hard work and through a certain lens, right? So it's just like, oh, it has to be labor, it has to be, whatever it is, like that's how you generate money. So the idea of hard work could be in conflict with this of, this is the way to make money is through a lot of effort once again. And so, creativity, so the highest paid people in the world are like entertainers, right? Like, well, I mean, outside CEOs and all that, but it's like, well, even business owners, yeah, it's like entrepreneurs, it's creativity still, right? But it's like creative pursuit. If I'm a singer, like my job's to connect to people's emotions and stuff, right? And performers get paid a ton of money for that. But and the thing is that if they're in flow, it might not be that hard of work. It's just kind
Right.
of what our mind's willing to accept. In photography, the best photographers in the world, like what do they get paid and what did it take for them to get there? And they had to start somewhere. But it's like everything can be a career and the internet's really opened that up, obviously. We have, like creators make tons of money now. It's just like getting your mind up to speed with, making peace with this being a viable option for resources to come through. And so it just can take so many different forms. Money is a very complicated thing, especially if you came from a household of lack and scarcity. There could be all these weird rules that were like taught to us about money, and that can be very limiting. And so that's what's cool about branching off and trying new things is you start to get faced with that stuff is, okay, why am I in conflict with this really? What was I made to feel about this type of work? Or is it simply just because it's not a normal job? Me as a coach, income can be all over the board. And so somebody with a normal job doesn't really understand that, right? Where it's like, oh, they just get their paycheck every couple weeks. There's all these ideas of if it's what's exciting to me, if this is the pursuit I want to do, it's like as I branch off and do something different than my norm, then there's going to be all these internal conflicts that are going to surface every step of the way. Our ability to ask for money, we've talked about this before. It's like, even with your team, you're like, yeah, I don't really care to make money on it, right? And that kind of thing. That's fine. We can choose that consciously to be like, well, yeah, this is just for fun. I don't really care. But then there are things that maybe we have the desire to make money with it, but then I'm still taking that same approach over here, right? Of just like, oh, I'll just do it for free, to be a friend or whatever. But it's like that comes into owning your value and just knowing your time's valuable and that you are providing a service, you have gifts. And if we're not, sometimes if we're adopting that mindset of just kind of carefree about it, that's actually building resentment towards the other people that we're not charging. Because on some
Sure.
level, we do want to receive money for it because that's validation. But then, that's also like, they value my work. And so if they value something, they should pay for it, like that kind of thing. There's so many different offshoots to these types of problems where it just really takes getting deeper into your psychology. But yeah, so we could have the childhood conditioning stuff. We could be like, people are weird about money, so I don't want to disrupt them. I don't want to create tension here. Like, So that could be more the people pleasing version. There could be, I don't really see my work as valuable. And so why would anybody else? There's all these different slants we could put on it. The work is always the same regardless. It's just like, okay, what's the conflict within me that I'm actually dealing with, and confronting it and then reconciling it. So reconciling it is simply, I need to be able to see this in a way that allows me the path forward, right? Rather than me being stuck and basically rejecting opportunities or shutting down opportunities. How can I open this up more in a way that feels good to me? And so, when we start into something, that might mean, okay, so in the coaching world, a lot of people will they start coaching people for free. And then as they get some testimonials and clients, and it's just like, okay, now I'm going to start charging. I think climbing the ladder is a pretty healthy mindset of well, at least starting small. Okay, at least I'm getting money for this now. And then as I get more familiar with that, it's just how can I grow that? Right. And so that really is a confidence piece of, as I develop my skill becomes more valuable. And so why wouldn't I charge more for it? Because you're always going to feel that gap. If I'm undercharging, that's going to feel uncomfortable too, because it's going to be well, yeah, I deserve more here for everything that I've put into this. And so that's kind of on either side of it. We could run into some conflicts. I always just encourage, every step of the way, you're okay, I want a number that stretches me a little bit, that makes me uncomfortable, so that I grow into it. Because it's I want to feel pulled in that direction of okay, I really want to embody that I'm worth this. And then once you get there, you're just okay, now that I'm here, I'm gonna reach for the next run, and I'm gonna stretch myself again. How do I need to sharpen my skills to get to that next level? And so it's much better to be in tune with that. Like I said early on, so I was working with, basically when I wrapped up baseball, I created this program and I had a business partner. So I worked on kind of mindset and emotions with high school baseball players. And I had a partner that did the mechanics. So we mostly worked with pitchers. And so this was a remote program, but we only worked with private school kids. And the parents would pay us a bunch of money, they'd fly us out. We'd work with them one-on-one for an entire weekend, the two of us. It was really intensive work, but it was just kind of where there were some clients where it felt very worth it because they were really engaged with it, and they grew tremendously. But then there was other clients where I felt guilty because it didn't seem like they were as invested in it as their parents were. Their parents were paying us, but the kids were oh yeah, I'd like to be really good at baseball, but also I'm not willing to put in all that work either. Right. So it's just we couldn't get the same results over here that we could over here. When you start charging a lot of money for that, then it's well, this isn't a good fit here. Right. And so that was what kind of really made me take a step back and reassess, being okay, well, yeah, I only want to work with people that want to work with me. And that dynamic with the parents paying, it's just kind of well, the kids, it's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and they're actually not feeling the weight of it because they obviously don't pay for it. So it's just kind of there's all these little kinks you got to work out along the way. You have to try out different models, different things to see what feels right to you. Because if you're conflicted about your work, that's going to affect how you execute on it too. So it is about, how can I use this to bring the most out of me? And because that's what's going to further my skills and development. That's what's going to actually increase my rate and what I'm able to charge, and where I'm going to actually see myself as very valuable because I've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this thing. And so I know I've done work on a level that other people haven't. And so that's what makes me worth it relative to other people. There's so many different dynamics here, but it's ultimately we're trying to get to peace with whatever the internal conflict is about money and charging. And so there's so many different angles we could take on that.
I know for me, I can think back to specific moments in my life where I heard family members pass judgment on how much somebody charged for something. And it could be anything. Photography would just be one example of many, many things. And that sort of judgment of it being ridiculous that anybody would get paid that much to do XYZ, whatever the thing is.
Yeah. It's often very context based with that. So So some
Yeah.
people will say like, oh, this is super expensive for this, but then they'll spend a bunch of money on something else because they like value,
Oh,
they,
yeah.
they
Yeah.
value that more. So you're just kind of like, well, like, what's the difference? They, they,
Yeah.
that's what the mind does is it makes exceptions. It's like, oh, that's not worth it, but I really value this. So I'm willing to spend above and beyond for that and not even say anything about the price.
Yeah. There's definitely some stuff in that. But as you were talking through the idea of receiving, and this is a trendy topic in the world, if our listeners are on any sort of social media, I'm sure they're hearing it, but there's a lot of ideas around manifestation. And some of what you were saying, like, feels a little bit in line with that. But from the standpoint of, I recently listened to a guy who did some research who was very skeptical of the idea of manifestation. And then he was like, oh shit, this actually is real. But it's real in the context of somebody who's doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, manifestation doesn't work for, if you're sitting around doing nothing, was sort of his theory. But if you're taking steps in the direction that you want to go, it could work for you. But anyway, I would love to hear your take on that.
My take on it is that, so we have a desire. So it's like, okay, I want this. My first thing to do is just like start familiarizing myself with what that's going to take. I'm going to start thinking about it more, maybe doing some research, like all that stuff. And then I'm going to start taking some steps towards it. As I take steps towards it, I'm going to be confronted with what I believe that's in conflict with that. Okay. So as I move towards it, things are going to happen that are going to create emotional responses within me. Those reactions are going to point me to what I believe. So if I haven't achieved something yet, or if I'm not there yet, I'm not fully in tune with it. I'm not fully in sync with it. So there's going to be a part of me that doesn't believe it's possible. We fear the unknown. We're all uncomfortable with it. It brings us anxiety. It's that idea of like, as I take steps towards it, I'm kind of shown what I currently believe through my emotional reactions. When I have these reactions, I take a step back and I go inward. I try to discover what's going on within me that's in conflict with what I want. That's where these limiting beliefs come up. That's where the trauma, the past scenarios, if they're unresolved, my mind's trying to protect me from that next step. It's trying to protect me from that thing. And so that's why I have to go in and reconcile it. That means make peace with it. So it's in a negative place. And I want to go into the negative emotion. I want to understand it. And once I understand it, I no longer fear it. But then as I understand it, now I can open up my mind again about it. Okay. Because as I'm taking steps, my mind's going to shut down. And then that's where doubts are going to come up. It's going to be giving me the old story about why it's not possible, why it's not okay, and that could be shame-based thinking of like, I don't deserve this, or, I shouldn't want those things, whatever it is. As I take the steps, it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because as I'm making progress, then the lower layers are going to come up to show me what's still in conflict with that. And so it is a bit of a journey where it's like every step I take, I expect that there's things that are going to surface within me that are going to be in conflict with what I want. And so my job is to resolve those. And so that's where I take a deeper look. And then as I make peace with it, my mind lets it go. My nervous system expands again. And now with my mind being open, I'm in tune with my next steps. So I can see new opportunities. I'm looking at the situation differently because I'm no longer looking to protect myself from it. I'm looking at like, okay, I'm optimistic again. How can I take more steps forward towards this? We just keep following that until completion. So I'm not a big outcome person. I'm more of a process person because the outcome becomes a natural byproduct of you just working the cycle. Okay. So every step I take, I expect things are going to come up that are going to show me how I need to grow in order to get to my next step. You just keep climbing the ladder. And so as I expand my mind, I'm no longer shut off to the possibilities. So I start to see things differently, and I'm more in tune with people that are resonating on that level. So that's where helpful people start to show up. They kind of say when the teacher's ready or when the student's ready, the teacher shows up, that kind of thing. Well, the same thing's true as like, if I'm really fixated on trying to make something happen, I'm going to be brought different characters that are going to show me where I'm at in the journey. So I might think like, oh, this is the opportunity that's going to take me to completion. But that might be the stepping stone of like, well, I still have some kinks to work out within me. So this person, they look like they're going to bring me there, but then they're actually going to present me with the problems I need to overcome in order to continue to progress. So, so it's kind of like every step of the way, you're shown through your thoughts, through people, through events that, hey, this is what's still holding me back. And then once I get there, it's just going to kind of feel like a natural next step. So it's just going to be like, oh, I'm like completely aligned with it because I've worked out all the subconscious blocks to it. And so that's going to be more of the healing work, really making peace with these situations because those things are going to prevent you from reaching the goal because it's trying to protect you. So it won't allow you to go there. And so we always talk in our work about this tipping point, okay, where I want to get to this place of courage to act on things. And so if I'm in like 80% doubt about something, it's going to be very difficult for me to take actions. And so that's why we have to take small steps. But as we get to 80% confidence, it starts to become like, oh, well, yeah, like I just know that if I keep following this path, I'll get there. When I take that journey from 20 to 80, now it's like, oh, like I've worked out all these problems. I kind of see how these things work, where I know I'm presenting things and I work through the challenges and then I get stronger and then I get closer to what I want. And a lot of times once you get closer to what you want, you're just like, yeah, I don't even know if I really want that anymore because once again, it's about becoming something, right? And so you become somebody that's like capable of executing on that or having it, but it's also like it almost becomes insignificant because now you've increased your capacity so much that you just kind of trust that you can create on a bigger level, like increasingly, where every vantage point I go to, I'm going to have new desires that come up for me. Every time I cross the finish line, it's just like, okay, what's next? And that's going to be what excites you. It's going to be like, yeah, I'm curious about this. I feel pulled in this direction. And then so you just kind of keep working it. It's kind of this continuous refinement process of every step you take is designed to show you what's holding you back. If you do the work to look at what's holding you back, now I can take the next action easier because I cleared out the resistance. And that's what we're talking about with alignment is I'm clearing out all the resistance that's preventing me from having it, from preventing me from receiving it. And so if all the blocks are out of the way, now it's only a matter of time. That's where I really have to detach from the timing piece because once again, there's all these things that are lining up that you can't possibly comprehend, right? Like I'm on this journey, I'm pouring a lot of energy and effort into something. And I have to trust that when I'm ready for it, it's going to pop through for me. This is a lot of the conversations, I've had with your husband, Aaron, where it's like, he's working a sales job, working all these relationships and stuff. And I'm like, no, we just have to stay in the process. We just have to keep working it. You don't know when things are going to come through, but they will. You just have to trust that they will. And it's about that consistency of every time I hit a wall, I don't let that shut me down. When I hit the wall, I go inward and I see what's holding me back and I transform that. And now I'm free to move on to my next step.
For sure. I think to, pull this back fully to receiving, and because manifestation is about receiving. So that's part of why, as you were talking, I thought to bring that up. But to bring it back in the point of like helpful people, right? And if we go back to my first example, it is a little bit of like, I've been saying I want that, and then like somebody steps in to do it, and everything in me is, wait, no.
Yeah.
So I do think, yeah, all of that is like a good point to come back to, like, you don't want to block the thing you're trying to get.
Mhm. So in terms of like the energy you're putting out, it's like, well, how filtered is it? Right. So if I'm really confident and certain in myself, like I can move mountains, right? But if there's only like half of me that's on board, my actions are going to reflect that. Like I'll be hesitant, I'll kind of be watchful, I'll be walking on eggshells, like, okay, what's going to go wrong? But, once we start to build that trust within ourselves, I can take bigger and bigger actions because I trust that I can figure it out. We have this continuous focus on things and we're continuing to work the puzzle as it reveals itself to us. And it reveals it as my intention is going in this direction. So I'm being shown what's not matching up. And so that's what my problems are. So as long as I'm working through those things, I always have this path forward. It just matters whether I want to stick with it or not, right? If something has excitement behind it, if I'm really passionate about it, that's something I'm willing to stick with. But sometimes we start on the path I'm super excited about it, but I might have kind of superficial like motives. I might, oh, I just want to be rich, right? Or whatever. And well, great. But it's like we probably need something deeper to pull from because most paths are relatively difficult because you're having to conquer yourself along the way. So what's going to have enough motivation behind it for you to want to kind of face your demons, right? Face the parts of you that are stuck. Usually we need to maintain interest on some level. So if I get burnt out and exhausted when I'm on a certain path, that doesn't mean I just set it down forever and then I just settle. Let's say, well, I need a different dynamic here. I need to switch gears. Maybe I need a new goal. Maybe I need something to keep pushing me in that direction because the journey is the journey regardless. Whatever you use as your focal point, that may shift and change as you get closer to it because whatever you wanted, it's like you wanted at one stage and you might have outgrown that stage by now. So once I get past that, I might be like, oh, well, that's not really true for me anymore, but this is what excites me now. And so we just kind of redirect in that direction and it continues that journey. So like I said, a lot of it, in my perspective, a lot of these things become natural byproducts of do I need the thing or not? The further along, the closer I get to it, I just start to feel the void starts to fill in regardless, whatever I felt like I was lacking because I faced myself along the way. So I start to be happier with less because it's just like, oh, I don't actually need that thing. I feel like pretty good every day now. Right. But that's the only reason we don't feel good is because there's these aspects of ourself that are locked in guilt and shame and fear and all that stuff. And so as we face those and conquer those, we become more whole, which makes us feel more at peace with ourselves. And then that's when kind of creation gets a little bit interesting because it's coming from this place of detachment, but it's kind of like, once again, you just latch on to it's kind of more of a childlike mentality where it's just like you just kind of follow whatever's like interesting and exciting to you because that's what continues the journey. Just wrap on that.
Well, this was really fun. I liked this conversation. The next time we record, we'll be in real
Mhm.
life. That's exciting. Yeah. You have any last closing thoughts or you want to talk about where people can find you if they want to go deeper?
With receiving, what we're trying to do is really just get out of our own way. That just means making peace with your past. I've said it 1,000 times and I'll say it 1,000 more. It's these resolved conflict or these unresolved conflicts that block us from making progress. And so it's about trusting, it's about surrendering and letting go of control. So when we're in control, we're manipulating things to get what we want. Usually that's kind of there's polarity to that. There's going to be, okay, yeah, maybe I achieved this thing, but then I might have created some other problems along the way. So the cleanest version is to, just get in your heart, just align with what feels true to you and take those steps towards it. And where you're holding yourself back, that's going to be revealed to you through your emotions. So a negative emotion or a reaction, that's where your work actually is you're here to conquer yourself. And that means letting go of these lower aspects of the ego that want to control and manipulate because that actually it doesn't matter what you achieve, it doesn't matter what you obtain. If that's still in play, it's not going to be as rewarding as you think it is. It's not going to feel as good as you think it is. It's going to be fleeting. And so we really teach wholeness here to just make peace with yourself. And then from that place, a lot of good things start to flow. And that's what we're all really after at when it comes to it. If you're really to take it to the bottom, that's kind of what we all want is to just feel at peace with ourselves. And so we always think it's these external things and of course the external things can be great, but it's like we want to enjoy the journey and the ride along the way too. So if you're
Okay,
interested in
cool.
this work, you can visit my website, brandonthielk.com. You can schedule a 30-minute strategy session with me. We can talk through what you're dealing with and how I can help. And then also you can sign up for my newsletter on my website as well. So each week I send out some insights for you to think about and also, recap of the podcast and whatever is going on in the business. So if you want to follow me on Instagram at Brandon Thielk and YouTube, and then at bthelk on TikTok. So post out there daily. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, like, comment, subscribe. Looking forward to next time.
Yeah, all those things. It'll be good. Talk to you
All
later,
right. See
Brandon.
ya.